This podcast contains descriptions of violence against children and adult language and is not suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised. Hi everyone, and welcome to Suffer the Little Children, the true crime podcast giving voices back to the victims of child abuse and shining a harsh spotlight on the parents, guardians, and caretakers who silenced them. I'm your host, Laine, and this is episode 131, Dante Mullinix Revisited. In episodes 76 and 77, I told you the heartbreaking story of 2-year-old Dante Mullinix, who died just 6 days before his 3rd birthday. Tyree Bowie, who was seeing Dante's mother, Leah Mullinix, told police he thought Dante had choked on animal crackers, but Dante's death was ruled a homicide caused by traumatic brain injury with strangulation and chest compression. Many believed Tyree was innocent, and recent events have proven that theory correct. In this episode, I'll provide recent updates on Dante's case. You'll also hear me discuss the lack of justice in Dante's case with his aunt, Sarah Mullinix, as well as Tyree Bowie himself. This is episode 131, Dante Mullinix Revisited. I'd like to take a moment to thank 2 new patrons, Kelly B. from South Park, Pennsylvania, and Laura I. from the house on Niebolt Street. Thank you both so much for your support. If you'd like to help keep the show going, you can make a monthly or annual pledge at patreon.com/stlcpod or a one-time contribution at ko-fi.com/stlcpod. I appreciate you all so much. It's not often I can say I'm happy to bring you updates on a particular case, but considering the grim circumstances surrounding Dante's death, there actually is some good news to tell today. Nothing will ever bring Dante back, but at the very least, there's been a positive resolution to one important part of the whole jumbled injustice pile this case has become. On that note, let's get into the updates. But first, I'll give a quick recap of Dante's story. If you haven't yet listened to episodes 76 and 77, which I originally released in September of 2021, you might want to go back and listen to those first. I re-released them on Tuesday of this week to make them easier to find. Regardless, I'll try to give you Dante's story in a nutshell, although it is very complex. Dante Angel Mullinix was born on September 21, 2015, to 18-year-old mother Leah Mullinix. At the time, Leah lived with her sister Sarah and Sarah's 5 kids in their home in Adams County, Pennsylvania. Sarah had a very special bond with her nephew, who she called Monkey Man, and she took care of him a lot more consistently than Leah did. In the summer of 2018, Leah and Sarah had a falling out, and Leah took Dante and moved out. They bounced from place to place in York, Pennsylvania, about 30 minutes away from Sarah's home, intermittently staying with some people who were reportedly affiliated with gangs and involved with illegal drugs. One of these people was Hector Rivera, better known by his street name, Holiday, who offered Leah and Dante a room in his mother's home for a while. After Leah admittedly cheated on Holiday, she and Dante were kicked out in August and ended up staying for a short time with Albert Ghost Castro, who was, like Holiday, rumored to be affiliated with the Latin Kings street gang. Leah then met 40-year-old Tyree Bowie on Facebook and soon began hanging out with him in person. Tyree couldn't offer her a place to stay, but he managed to find her a room at a local shelter called Access York. They never really defined their relationship, which was kind of like a close friendship that edged toward romance. Meanwhile, Sarah found out that her sister and nephew were homeless, living out of Leah's car. Sarah immediately filed for emergency custody of Dante, alleging that her younger sister was physically and mentally unstable, as well as physically and verbally abusive to Dante. A court date was set for September 5, 2018. On August 31st, Leah took Dante to the emergency room with swelling and painful ulcers on his genitals, telling staff he had suffered from the condition for at least 4 days. In truth, it had more likely been festering for several weeks. The poor baby was crying and screaming in pain, but Leah didn't bother filling the prescriptions they gave her. She slept through her son's screaming and refused for over an hour to give him even Tylenol, despite shelter staff pleading with her to ease his pain. The next day, the shelter filed a child abuse report with the York County Office of Children, Youth and Families, or CYF. On September 2nd, a nurse practitioner named Natalie Billings examined Dante, writing in her report that she suspected trauma and neglect and believed Dante should be taken into CYF custody and not allowed to leave the hospital with his mother. During his examination, multiple injuries were documented on a forensic diagram, including over 20 bruises all over his body, lesions on his face, and what looked like a cigarette burn on his temple. 3 days after the ER visit for Dante's genital infection, CYF caseworkers forced Leah to fill his prescriptions. She expressed disgust that she had to apply the medication to her own baby's genitals. Despite all of these red flags flapping in the breeze, CYF deemed Dante safe to remain with his mother. Leah failed to appear at the emergency custody court hearing on September 5th, supposedly because of a flat tire. Even though this was an emergency motion for custody, the judge agreed to push the date back an entire month to October 3rd. Dante wouldn't survive that long. On September 6, 2018, Leah asked Tyree to take her to the emergency room for a migraine, leaving Dante in Tyree's care for under 2 hours. At 10:23 p.m., Tyree carried Dante into the ER, unresponsive. Dante was airlifted to the Children's Hospital at Hershey Medical Center, where he was placed on life support. 9 days later, Dante was pronounced dead on September 15, 2018. During the time he was on life support, Leah did not allow her sister, Sarah, into the hospital to see her nephew. Despite insisting he was innocent, Tyree Bowie was arrested on September 19, 2018, and charged with criminal homicide and endangering the welfare of a child. He was held in the York County Prison for over 4 years. Leah was also charged, but only with child endangerment. The same month her son died, Leah was pregnant again. But as soon as her daughter was born, CYF removed the baby from her custody. She proceeded to get pregnant twice more after that. Another daughter was removed by CYF, and both girls were ultimately adopted. The third baby, a little boy, is currently in Sarah's care. A report from the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services later revealed that Dante suffered a subdural hematoma, broken ribs, a battered pineal area and scrotum, bite marks on the arms, and a lacerated liver and pancreas. Dante's autopsy also determined the reason for his painful genital infection. When he died, the not-quite 3-year-old baby suffered from an active case of HSV-2, also known as type 2 herpes. Notably, Tyree Bowie does not have herpes and therefore could not have caused Dante's infection. That didn't stop Leah from going on television shortly after her son's death and claiming that Tyree sexually assaulted Dante, giving him the sexually transmitted infection, which is not only not true, but not physically possible. She has also claimed Tyree raped her, but based on trial testimony, neither Leah nor Tyree have been diagnosed with HSV-2, although interestingly, Hector Holiday Rivera does have it. For over 4 years, many, including Tyree's mom, Cheryl Preston, and Dante's aunt, Sarah, have fought to prove Tyree's innocence and insisted that York County authorities find the person who abused and murdered Dante. Because she shared CYF documentation on her Justice for Dante Facebook page in 2020, Sarah was charged in 2021 with an obscure crime, unauthorized release of information, which is a Pennsylvania law designed to prevent the disclosure of information by state officials with access to confidential databases, like CYF employees. Sarah did not obtain confidential information from a state database. She obtained the documentation from Tyree himself, who received it as part of the discovery process leading up to his trial. Free speech advocates nationwide revolted against the ridiculous charge, especially when it was revealed that Sarah was one of only 2 people charged under that particular law in the past decade. Sarah's mother, Victoria Schrader, then filed a complaint against York County District Attorney Dave Sunday and Pennsylvania Attorney General Josh Shapiro, seeking an injunction to prevent them from criminally prosecuting or taking other adverse action against her for sharing the same information Sarah did. In her complaint, Victoria alleged that she believed Dave Sunday was using the charge against her daughter in a discriminatory manner because of Sarah's outspoken advocacy about the negligence and failure of CYF in Dante's case. Next up, I'll get to the case updates, but first, I'll take a break to hear from my sponsors. Shortly after I covered Dante's case on the podcast in September of 2021, I was ecstatic to hear from Leah Mullinix, who I spoke with in episode 77 and who had excellent news to share. Her charge of unauthorized release of information had been dropped. A month later, Court of Common Pleas Judge Gregory Snyder issued a gag order in the case to prevent further disclosure of CYF documents. Sarah currently has 2 free speech lawsuits ongoing in federal court, one against York County District Attorney Dave Sunday and the Pennsylvania Office of the Attorney General, and the other against Judge Snyder. Sarah's mom, Victoria, is still waiting on a decision as of this recording. She was, however, granted her requested injunction in May of 2022, a ruling that District Attorney Sunday appealed, while the Office of the Attorney General did not. A decision has not yet been made on the DA's appeal. Finally, after over 4 years of waiting, Tyree Bowie's 4-week trial on charges of first- and third-degree murder and child endangerment began in December of 2022. As much as I want to talk about absolutely every detail the way I usually do, since this is an update episode, I'll try to keep it brief. As Tyree had been saying all along, his defense attorney, Farley Holt, told jurors during his opening argument that his client was on the wrong end of a good deed when Leah left Dante with him that night. Mr. Holt said that all of Dante's pre-existing injuries converged into a choking incident that caused his hypoxic brain injury, adding, "I'm going to show my client didn't do it, that more likely than not, it was the mother who did this. Dante Mullinix was doomed before my client ever got involved with him." He described the night Dante became unresponsive, saying Tyree was driving back to the hospital to pick up Leah when he thought Dante was choking on a Teddy Graham cookie. Tyree pulled Dante into the driver's seat with him, attempted to dig the cookie out of his mouth, and tried to perform CPR or the Heimlich maneuver while driving. When he attempted to give Dante mouth-to-mouth, wet cookie chunks sprayed from Dante's nose onto Tyree's face, which Tyree, unthinkingly, wiped on his jeans. In their opening argument, the prosecution insisted Tyree caused all of Dante's injuries between the time he dropped Leah at the hospital and the time he arrived there with Dante unresponsive. They leaned on the fact that there was a 16 to 19-minute window of time when Tyree was not in contact with anyone on his phone and suggested that during this window, Tyree flew off the handle and beat the baby, punching, kicking, biting, and strangling him, as well as slamming him to the floor. Dr. Wayne Ross, the forensic pathologist who performed Dante's autopsy, testified that Dante had suffered diffuse axonal brain trauma, which means the connective fibers in his brain were torn. He said that Dante would not have been able to walk or move normally after sustaining such an injury, which he said was caused when Dante's head was struck multiple times with great force. However, Dr. David Fowler, a retired Maryland state medical examiner, testified for the defense, providing his opinion that Dante died from choking after the lack of oxygen caused his brain to swell and herniate into his brainstem. He said the autopsy report made no mention of hemorrhaging in Dante's neck tissues, which would have been present if he was strangled, and he also ruled out suffocation because there was no bruising or tearing of Dante's lips and gums. His larynx was swollen, which is more indicative of choking on a foreign object. Dr. Lori Frazier, a child abuse expert MD, and Penn State University professor, testified that in her mind there was no question that Dante's head injury occurred after Tyree took him to a convenience store that evening, where surveillance cameras filmed Dante walking and acting normally. She said that after receiving a brain injury like Dante did, he would immediately have shown signs of trauma and wouldn't be walking around or functioning normally. This next detail needs to be highlighted. Unbelievably, Dr. Fraser also testified that while Dante's sexually transmitted infection could have been caused by sexual abuse, another possible explanation for a 2-year-old baby contracting genital herpes could have been water droplets from an infected person landing on Dante's genitalia, such as during a shower. That sounded so ridiculous to me that I immediately started looking into it, and according to every source I could find, herpes cannot be spread through water, whether it be water from a shower, bath, swimming pool, hot tub, or anything else. The herpes virus requires direct skin-to-skin contact to spread. It can't even survive on a surface for more than a few seconds, let alone be transmitted through water. By the way, Dr. Fraser helped write the test for board certification in child abuse pediatrics. Let that sink in. Video of Tyree's police interview was shown during the trial, during which investigators, including Detective Sergeant Kyle Hauer, asked if Tyree became angry because of something Dante had done. Tyree insisted Dante never behaved badly around him, saying, "I will tell you until the day I die. The kid is good. He's just seen too much." Truer words may have never been spoken. It's also worth mentioning that Detective Hauer was the same officer who searched Tyree's car but neglected to collect some obvious evidence that he said was of no evidentiary value. He claimed no cookies or packaging thereof was found, although a package of animal crackers was later found in Dante's diaper bag. Also, when Tyree's friend and then roommate, Lacey Pfeiffer, asked Detective Hauer a week after Dante's death if he wanted to collect an empty packet of Teddy Grahams and a juice box from the garbage at her home, the detective declined, saying, "We don't need them. He's guilty." Lacey put gloves on, retrieved the items from the trash, and brought them to Tyree's attorney herself. When Mr. Holt offered the evidence to the DA's office, they also declined to take it. Police subsequently threatened Lacey with evidence tampering charges for preserving the cookie packet and empty juice box that they didn't even take. At the trial, a police forensic expert testified that she found cookie residue on Tyree's jeans, steering wheel, and car door, which, interestingly, supported the defense even though she was called as a prosecution witness. Medical staff who saw Dante on September 6th all agreed he had more injuries on that day than he did when he was seen on the 2nd for his genital infection. Leah took the stand herself for 2 days, testifying that she didn't see many of Dante's injuries before he arrived in the ER unresponsive, blaming Tyree for injuring her son. After Tyree's attorney, Mr. Holt, showed her earlier pictures, though, Leah had to admit that some of the bruises were already present. She said Dante seemed run down on September 6th before she went to the hospital for her migraine, saying, "He wasn't really eating much at that time. He wasn't feeling the greatest." She testified that she blamed his lack of appetite and the odd way Dante was walking on his genital infection. When asked by the prosecutor about each of Dante's injuries, including bruises on almost every part of his body and a bite mark on his arm, Leah cried harder with each question. Throughout most of her testimony, she answered the prosecution's direct examination calmly and confidently. When she was questioned by Mr. Holt, she was a lot less certain of her answers, giving a lot of "I don't knows," "I don't remembers," and other non-committal statements. Leah also implicated alleged gang member ex-boyfriend Holiday, saying she believed he hit Dante, but wasn't sure if she ever said he had molested her son. She had to admit that Holiday's family had actually called CYF on her, alleging that she abused Dante. For what it's worth, after Leah was arrested for child endangerment, Holiday left the state. He has never been charged or, to my knowledge, investigated in connection with Dante's death. When Mr. Holt asked if Leah had previously made the statement that the week before he became unresponsive, Dante jumped off a bed, hit his head on the table, and lost consciousness for about 30 seconds, Leah said she couldn't remember. One extremely important piece of Leah's testimony was her own admission that she herself had endangered Dante's welfare around 300 times. Arlene Castro, the mother of Arthur Ghost Castro, and her longtime partner, Brian Sweeney, testified to being concerned about the multiple bruises and injuries they saw on Dante when he stayed with them. Arlene, her 17-year-old granddaughter, and Brian also testified about seeing the painful infection of Dante's genitals when they gave the filthy little boy a bath after noticing he had a stench about him. Arlene gave Dante some of another grandchild's clothes to wear and kept the clothes he wore that day wrapped in a plastic bag. They were presented at trial, and I'll include a photo of those absolutely filthy clothes in the Facebook album for this episode. That baby was, without a shadow of a doubt, being severely abused and neglected well before Tyree ever came into the picture. Tyree bravely took the stand during his own trial. He testified that when he first met Leah and Dante, he was dirty, clothes was dirty, sneakers was dirty, hair was nappy, he had bruises on his face. He said it looked at the time like Dante exploded in his diaper, with fecal matter visible through his jeans and up his t-shirt. When Leah gave Dante a bath, he said, he saw bruises on Dante's leg and back, as well as his discolored genital area. When Tyree asked about Dante's bruises, she told me her boyfriend Holiday beat on Dante. She told me she believed he might have molested Dante. As Dante continued to collect bruises and injuries, Tyree testified, Leah would play them off, saying he had fallen, and claiming when he was frustrated he hit his head on the wall and other objects. Tyree described his relationship with Leah as a kind of boyfriend-girlfriend type arrangement, although Leah was still seeing other men, including Holiday and Ghost. Tyree described buying Leah gas, diapers, food, and other items, as well as giving her money for a hotel once. The one he really became attached to was Dante, for whom he felt a paternal, protective type of bond, referring to him as my boy and my son. About healthy photos of Dante shown at the trial, Tyree said he thought the photos were taken before he met Dante and Leah. He never looked that healthy. The day Dante became unresponsive, Tyree said, Leah hadn't mentioned a headache all day until the moment she asked him to take her to the hospital. At that time, Dante was lying on his lap, and he said he tried to put Dante down, but the little boy threw up all over him. He had gagged on food earlier as well, and Tyree said he hadn't seemed normal the whole day, but Leah thought it was just because of his infection. After the choking incident, when Tyree arrived at the hospital with Dante, he confronted Leah, telling her she had to tell the doctors the truth about the bruises he had seen on Dante, and the makeup he noticed Leah sometimes applied to her son to cover them. Closing arguments took 5 hours on Thursday, December 29, 2022. The jury began deliberations the following day, deliberating for only a few hours before returning with a unanimous verdict. Tyree Marshall Bowie was not guilty on all counts. At the defendant's table, Tyree sobbed into his weeping attorney's shoulder as the verdict was read. Family, friends, and supporters celebrated outside the courtroom. Defense attorney Farley Holt said, "If ever there was a case there was reasonable doubt, this is the case. It's one giant, steaming pile of reasonable doubt." That evening, Tyree was released from York County Prison, where he had spent the last 4 years incarcerated as an innocent man. As friends and supporters cheered, Tyree ran straight into the arms of his mom and Mr. Holt. On January 1st, 2023, news cameras followed Tyree as he solemnly visited Dante's grave for the first time.
You know, he didn't know how to do anything, so it was just how he would just keep saying yeah whenever he saw me, and put his hand up every time he gets out my car for me to hold his hand. Just even be trying to teach him how to talk, and he tries his best to say the word, and he just can't get it. It's a lot, man. I miss just being around him, the hugs, the kisses, it's just a lot.
A week or so later, several jury members spoke with the York Dispatch, saying they knew, walking into deliberations, that they were going to vote to acquit Tyree. The prosecution had simply failed to prove its assertion that within a 16-minute window, Tyree essentially hulked out and attacked Dante with his fists, feet, and teeth, even slamming him to the ground. In the jury's opinion, then Detective, now Sergeant, Kyle Hauer had tunnel vision, immediately zeroing in on Tyree and failing to investigate other suspects, including Leah. They said what Sarah and Tyree's supporters have been saying for 4 years, that Hauer looked for evidence to support his theory and threw out anything that didn't.
When you mentioned the timeline, you think in 19 minutes to kind of go into that rage that they described is not probable or possible?
No.
Well, no. It's possible, I think, if somebody has anger issues or has a history of it. And if he did, I'm pretty sure the prosecution would have found somebody to come up there and tell us all about it.
Absolutely.
But you don't go from loving a kid the way that he did to murdering them in 19 minutes.
Why did you reach the verdict that you came to in this trial?
I would say, we all went in believing in the innocent until proven guilty. And I know I sat for 4 weeks waiting for the prosecution to drop a bombshell. And it just never came. And I could not get beyond that reasonable doubt.
When I came in, I was that person, I'll just be bluntly honest. I came in thinking, oh, the police are always right. They're there protecting us. They're there for justice. Never had any experience that told me otherwise. And when I finished this experience, I witnessed some things that really made me think differently about how our justice system works, and how somebody that was innocent can sit in jail for 4 years and the case just was not investigated, in my opinion, the way it should have been. And it was a huge disappointment for me. So I just felt, I just look at things very differently now than I did when I walked in.
And it didn't sound like they considered any other suspects. He was the last person with them. They put their blinders on and went after him and collected evidence to support their claim.
Yeah.
That was the feeling that I got.
Yeah. I think we all feel as Detective Howard was lousy at his job and what he did. And we believe he had him guilty from the very start.
And for him to get a promotion afterwards was just disgusting in my eyes.
Yeah.
Not to mention, he told, when he went to Lacey's house, he told Lacey that he was guilty.
Yeah,
and wasn't trying to work with. He should have collected all evidence, whether he thought it was relative or not.
Exactly.
And he didn't. And it was never. When he was on the stand, he never said he didn't say that. And 2 witnesses stood up and said basically he already had Tyree guilty. And never did he say he didn't say that. Well, he couldn't, because he perjured himself. And to me, the more this case went on, from the minute I saw the interviews, I was disgusted. And then as it went on, I honestly had a hard time looking at him in the courtroom.
Absolutely.
He was a detriment to the prosecution.
He always had a smirk on his face, very smug.
And he just took it as a joke.
His character was not great.
He sat there picking his nose that whole time.
Do you think the York City Police Department or the DA's office should look into Sergeant Hauer's actions in this?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
What would you like to see out of that, from that investigation, do you think?
I just don't want this to happen to somebody else. It's terrible that it happened to Tyree, let alone, I don't know who else this is happening to.
Exactly.
I want to believe in our justice system, and obviously, had he been the one that did this, that's fine, but you've got to go in and do your job the way it's supposed to be done and get true justice, whatever that is, not just what you want it to be. And I would like to think that I could trust the police department to do their job in that respect.
CYF also came up a lot in this case.
Oh, definitely. They dropped the ball.
Big time.
They dropped the ball.
They could have saved him, I think.
Yes, I mean, if this was a case where it was an emergency custody case from her sister Sarah, CYS should have provided. If she called up there to say she couldn't get a ride there, Adams County CYS should have stepped in and said,
"We'll be there.
We'll be there to get you." And look what happened the next day.
Yeah,
I mean, this was
emergency situation. You can't postpone
I think
an emergency situation.
both Adams County and York County Children and Youth Services dropped the ball on this poor child.
Oh, absolutely.
Dante never should have gone home on the second.
Never.
Yes.
No.
Tyree surprised the jurors by showing up during the interview.
Thank you from the bottom of my heart, like every single one of y'all. I felt bad for y'all too, because y'all had to sit there through the holidays and for a whole month.
Yeah, but our 4 weeks was nothing to your 4 years.
Yeah, definitely.
It's our civic duty, and I think we're all glad that we were the ones to be there for it.
Yes,
Absolutely.
On Wednesday, January 18th, 2023, Leah Mullinix, who remains free on unsecured bail even today, made an open plea to her third-degree felony child endangerment charge. This means she agreed with prosecutors about essentially pleading guilty, but is leaving it up to the judge to decide her punishment. During Leah's court hearing, York County Court of Common Pleas Judge Amber Kraft read the charging information against Leah, saying she endangered Dante by failing to obtain medication for him, despite knowing he was in so much pain, as well as for leaving him in a critical condition in Tyree Bowie's care. To the charge, Leah responded, yes, admitting that she did so. Judge Kraft ordered a pre-sentence investigation to be conducted, as well as mental health, drug, and alcohol evaluations for Leah, whose attorney, Joshua Niederheiser, said she is currently in a substance abuse counseling program. Judge Kraft deferred the sentencing until later this spring. So what's next in the search for justice for Dante, now that Leah has admitted on record that she knew Dante was in a critical condition when she left him with Tyree on September 6, 2018? That was among the topics I discussed this past weekend with Dante's aunt, Sarah Mullinix, and the freshly acquitted Tyree Bowie, who, on January 20th, 2023, celebrated his first birthday as a free man in 4 years. I'll take a quick sponsor break, and then you'll hear my conversation with Sarah and Tyree. Today on the podcast, my guests are Sarah Mullinix and Tyree Bowie. Thank you both for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Of course. And Tyree, congratulations. How does it feel to be out?
It's great. You go from fighting for the rest of your life to actually being free.
Oh, that's good. I'm so glad. I'm glad that the jury actually saw the evidence for what it was.
That was a blessing. It was scary, because like I would look at them and I just couldn't read them. And then sometimes when I would look over, they'd be staring at me. So it's just like, oh man, like what are they thinking? After hearing them talk and how they just said that like it took them less than 10 minutes to find me, not guilty on the murders. It was a great feeling that like they all believed in me, and they all didn't believe what the DA and, their experts, quote unquote, was trying to say. I don't know if you saw their interview that they did.
I did. I was going to ask you about that. How did it feel meeting with them face to face after the verdict like that?
It was great. It was great. I wish I could have met all of them, but the ones that I did meet, like I said, just hearing their side, I just always wanted to just hear, what they had to say, like their opinions and their arguments, as far as this whole situation went. And it was great. It was awesome. Yeah, I'm glad you had a jury with people who were willing to look critically at this evidence and not just take what the DA was spoon feeding them. Right. Like I said, just a lot of stuff that he was saying, like it didn't make sense. Like I said, he made it sound good, and he seemed a little too rehearsed. But if you really thought about what he actually was saying, like he just, like I said again, like he just didn't make no sense at all. Did the animal cracker thing come up specifically of the fact that they didn't even look for them? Oh, yeah. I mean, that was like, I think, that was key, because like their DNA and serologist expert stated that when they tested the tan material that was on my steering wheel and on my door panel, they said that it was consistent with the cookies that when they tested the cookies. The piece that flew out of Dante's mouth that was stuck in his throat, I wiped on my jeans because it flew out of his nose and like stuck to my face. So I wiped it on my jeans, and I don't know how or somebody must have took it off, but they didn't realize that dark fibers would be on that tan crusty material that they took off of my jeans. But, it's like too late. They already said on the news in September that they searched my car. They didn't find no cookies. Yeah, they did. They put out what they wanted the public to hear. Right. So then 9 months later, when I get it, the paper, it says that they did find the cookies. So it's like, all right, so y'all had already said this on the news, which is now a lie, which again, in my interview with Howard, he stated numerous times that he searched my car with a fine tooth comb and they didn't find no cookies anywhere. And I mean, even in the interview, I'm pointing at my jeans, like this is the cookie that I wiped on my jeans. And like, again, he still states that there was no cookies nowhere in my car. Yeah, they followed their theory and they didn't follow the evidence. And that's really just infuriating. He wanted to arrest me and then do an investigation. Right. Just assuming it was you because you were the last one with Dante. Right. Exactly.
Like in my trial, they only had me reading like parts of my interview with Howard. They didn't have me read the whole interview. So it made it seem like I was not being truthful, but it's like show the part where he's cussing at me and calling me a liar and repeatedly asking me the same question.
Yeah, there's methods of basically torture that they use.
Yeah, psychological torture.
Sarah, were you there for the whole trial?
No, I came down for it. I couldn't be in there for any of it.
They subpoenaed her and wasn't going to call her. They just didn't want her in the courtroom.
The district attorney. Yeah, they subpoenaed me.
That's very calculated.
Oh, yeah.
So when did you learn what the verdict was?
While I was at work.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was watching.
Okay, what was your reaction?
I was happy.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. I mean, Sarah, she did a lot. She did a lot. Sarah found a whole lot. Like people would reach out to her and
then the screenshots for your lawyer.
More or less incriminate themselves, not realizing that Sarah's recording everything.
Recording and screenshotting.
In the beginning, again, she, after hearing what they were saying on the news, she asked if I did this to her nephew.
Sure. I mean, it's a natural question. Yeah.
Correct. See, I didn't see the interviews. I was in a jail where they don't have TV. So I just heard from people, that they put this messed up picture of me up and they were saying all this stuff. And all right, and you got the cops saying this and the medical examiner saying that. So it's just like, all right, well, nobody's going to believe me. So, I mean, for her to just ask that question, like that's supposed to happen.
Yeah, you'd want to know for sure. And it's got to be hard because I know Dante was out of your house, Sarah, for a few months, right? It was only a couple of months.
It's like 3 months.
Seeing him every day, multiple times, going from that to not seeing him at all and having no idea what's going on with him has got to be so stressful.
Yeah. And then hearing that he's being neglected and stuff. And then you try doing what you're supposed to, like call children and youth, and they don't do their fucking job.
Right. And deem him safe. It's unreal.
You can't trust the cops either. Because in the beginning, I believed Howard too. Because he's like, oh, there was no cookies. He's the one that did this. And then after my news interview, when he flipped out on me.
Oh, did he?
That was like a huge red flag. He was pissed because I brought up children youth on TV. They protect each other.
During my trial, what it seemed like to me, it just seemed like everybody was just trying to watch each other's back because, they're sitting on the stand, not realizing that we have a lot of stuff that's documented. You got, I forgot what her name is. I think from Hershey Medical. Like she was saying one thing in her initial intake report and then sat on the stand and said something totally different. Now you got her and Ross. Now they're contradicting each other.
Yeah. So it comes down to who do you believe? I can't imagine what the jury has to process.
It was a lot. It was a month long. It was the holidays, and I felt bad for them myself. This was only supposed to be a 2-week trial.
Wow. And it ran 4. And how many witnesses were there? Do you know?
I believe over 30, around 30, 20 hours of that was Leah on the stand and my lawyer just
grilling her,
demolishing her.
Oh, I bet that was satisfying too.
I knew it was going to happen. As soon as the DA was done with their little questioning, I just knew Hope was he's been waiting 4 years and 4 months to do this. You would have thought she was on the stand for murder.
Is that when she admitted that she left Dante in your care in that condition, or when was that?
She said that at her status hearing when she took the open plea. And it's like, okay, well, where was all this in the beginning? Right. I had to sit 4 years and 4 months dealing with COVID, dealing with the jail shutdown, away from my family. I mean, I didn't see my family for like a year and a half because of COVID. If she would have said that in the beginning, then I wouldn't have had to go through this.
It seems like she wanted you to take the fall.
Yeah, but even in my trial, the DA said the reason why she got charged with endangering the welfare of a child is because she left him with me. That's in trial transcript, so they can't deny that. They never said she got the endangering the welfare of a child because she left him in my care while he was in critical condition. They never said that. They left that part out.
They only said it was because she left him with you.
They didn't add that part on that they added at her status hearing. So I'm sitting there and it's just like, it's like a slap in the face, a spit in the face. It's like
they're twisting the narrative.
Right. And it's like, I mean, as soon as I went in there, I know they didn't want me there. I mean, they, you had Howard and Pitts, and then you had Rachel, the DA. It's like, I know they didn't want me there, but I'm glad I did go.
I'm wondering, and I'm certainly hoping, can she still face additional charges for the same crime?
See, I don't think she can, for the fact that they said everything that they said that I supposedly done to him. You got these doctors up there saying this. You got Ross up there saying that. So they can't take back what they said on stand.
Right. They'd have to change their stories again.
Exactly. And then now, mind you, they're on stand and they're saying this. It was all false, but at the same time, they already said all this.
Mm-hmm. I mean, do they have any answers after your acquittal as to how these injuries happened to this poor little boy?
I guess, from what evidence was presented, this was ongoing abuse. There's a pattern of bruises. There's a pattern of her stating that he's getting these bruises from banging his head or smashing his face. We know that he had the 3-week-old broken wrist that was in a healing process before I came in the picture. So, I mean, it's pretty much we pretty much can tell what was going on, you know. But will we ever know the truth? Probably not, unless Leah is willing to admit, she already admitted leaving him in my care in critical condition. All right, so now she got to admit how he got in that condition.
Do you think her migraine was designed to get her out of the picture when she knew how injured he was?
Yeah, she didn't mention anything about a migraine throughout that whole day. And mind you, she's driving. I mean, they got video surveillance of us. She's driving and, she just said about this migraine, she got to go to the hospital. Can you stay with me? And I just agreed, not really paying attention on when this migraine happened. We all know it was BS. At the time, like I said, I wasn't thinking, but, after seeing the surveillance of her at the hospital and, she didn't show signs of a migraine, she sits in the brightest spot of the hospital waiting room.
Sarah, do you feel like she's remorseful at all for what she did?
No, I don't. He has no empathy, no nothing. He has a lot of hatred, though, but other than that, there is no I'm sorry. There's no admitting to anything. It's always everybody else. She's always the victim.
Have you talked to her at all since then?
Well, yeah, I have her baby.
Oh, so is it the second baby she had after?
Third baby.
Wait a minute. So she had 3 after Dante passed away?
Yeah, 2 girls and then a boy. I have the little boy.
Wow. I did not know that part. What is she doing now?
Well, she has to find another job because she lost the job that she had because after she was charged, they had to fire her.
So the drama is ongoing.
It's never ending.
Oh, nah, it's not going to end until we get justice for Dante.
What does justice for Dante look like to you guys?
Everybody responsible, I can only go off of the stuff that she was telling me that was happening to Dante. I never witnessed it. After seeing her history, she's just known to pass blame on the guy.
She lies.
When I say justice, I only can say as far as that part goes, I mean, she needs to be held accountable for it.
Yeah. It seems like it's going to take a lot to get the district attorney on board with that. But do you have plans on ways to kind of put pressure on them?
Well, I'm getting a billboard.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So you have done that in the past.
Yeah, and he's still mad about that first one. Wait till he sees the second one. He's going to be on that one.
Which, by the way, my trial got postponed because of it.
Don't blame this on me.
They don't want to admit that, but they know that billboard played a big part of them wanting to postpone my trial.
Yeah, I think it raised a lot of awareness about what was going on. It's, maybe a lot of people who didn't know about it before finally started looking at it.
They're trying to say that it made Tyree look bad. It actually made them look bad.
I'm like, all that matters is when we present this evidence, that's what's going to sway the jury. Not some billboard.
What happens now? I mean, is it considered wrongful imprisonment, or is it just basically you lose those 4 years and that's it? Good luck.
Oh, no. It's more. It's more to come. They took it took 4 years, 4 months of my life. I've lost people. This put a stain on my relationship with my children. I mean, we're cool, but it's just still it's 4 years that I was away. Even with my oldest, she was hurt when this happened. So she said a lot of stuff, and I know she only said it out of anger and hurt because it was embarrassing.
How old are your kids?
Between 26 and 12.
Do you have contact with them?
Yes. We talk. I talk to, we talk. Like I said, I'm still trying to build relationships.
Yeah. I mean, it's a long time to be away from anyone, but especially children who change so much in 4 years. It's crazy.
Yes, definitely.
I'm glad you at least have the opportunity now to make those connections with them and to build on the relationships.
I got to make a lot of things right. It's still there. It's still happened. It's still in everybody's heads. Like I said, the news, what they were saying.
Yeah, that's got to be hard to get over. There's probably still people in the community who look at you from the corner of their eye and give you looks in the stores and things like that.
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I have more people coming up to me congratulating me.
That's great. Actually, I come to think of it, when I've posted things about your case on social media, I haven't gotten any comments arguing with my viewpoint about your innocence. Really, I haven't gotten any dissension on that.
Well, I want to say, I really appreciate you sharing.
No problem. It's the least I can do.
Yeah. I mean, it's really could, after paying attention to what's really going on, like, we were posting a lot of stuff. We wasn't really trying to hold nothing back. As soon as I got my discovery, it's like, all right, I'm gonna send it to Sarah. I didn't think it was gonna. I didn't think it was going to charge her. Like, that wasn't my intentions.
No, of course. Who even knows about that law? It's so obscure. I'll pause here for one final sponsor break.
Howard like bullying girls, man. I have transcripts where he interviewing Lacey, my mom, my daughter's mom, and she tries to bully him, threatening them, telling them, I advise you not to talk to Tyree and his family. And he tried bullying me into admitting something that I couldn't admit. Howard, he puffs his little chest out. It's almost comical. He went from calling me a liar to Pitts coming in. She's talking about car accidents and if I know the difference between involuntary manslaughter and murder.
That must have been the scariest moment of your life.
Not at the time, not really, because I really didn't think a charge was going to be, I didn't believe that a crime was committed. It's not like I ran from them. I mean, as soon as I called them the next day, they wanted me to come in at 11. I go in at, I tell them, I can come in now. I go in at like 9:40 or something like that. I mean, so it really didn't scare me because I know what happened, like what I thought happened.
And more importantly, you know what didn't happen.
Exactly. And no matter what he said to me, no matter how many times he called me a liar, no matter how many times he stated, oh, so you're telling me my medical examiner's a liar? As much as he wanted me to, I never changed that part, of what I believed happened.
Where did they get the strangulation notion?
That was Ross. That was their medical examiner that they used.
He had bruises on his neck and marks on his neck, which you can see those in prior pictures too.
They said he had scratches on his neck. I don't have long nails. Like, my nails aren't long. I mean, that's something that they should have did. They should have measured them scratch marks.
The investigation was pointed in your direction from the start, and anything that didn't fit didn't make it into their argument.
Just like the bite marks, they didn't measure those either. They didn't do mouth impressions
at all.
No.
Nope.
So to this day, you don't know how those happened.
Well, Detective Pitts, which she didn't remember she said this, but it was in the transcripts where she had an interview with somebody and she stated that the bite mark was the size of a kid's mouth.
A child's mouth. In which Leah has a small mouth though too.
It's just so hard to think about. I'm sure you can't help it, but it must just haunt you. And I'm so sorry. I know how much Dante meant to you. And Tyree, it really seemed like you developed a bond with him so quickly and so strong.
Yeah. He warmed up to me. It took a couple days, but he warmed up to me.
Looks like he trusted you almost from the start. Just the pictures of you two. He just is so comfortable.
Yeah. That was another thing, it's like I only knew them for max 18 days. So from the time that I first met Dante, like, he was afraid of me. I'm not going to say me as a person, but he was just afraid, possibly because the last man that he was around, possibly, I don't know, this is what Liz stated, beat on him or whatever. I don't know if that's, why he was just standoffish and kind of stayed away from me. But, after a couple of days, he started warming up to me. And then, like, every time I would come around, he would just be around me, like he would just follow me everywhere and give me hugs, I feel like it was stuff that he wanted to do with his mom, but
that he felt more love coming from you.
Correct.
Yeah, that tells you a lot also, but I'm glad he at least felt that, in his last weeks.
Yeah. maybe he wasn't verbal, but if you just really paid attention and understood what he was doing, like it was like he was trying to tell me, you know what I mean? Like just that day, I just feel like I had 4 years to sit and think. So I replay a lot of that stuff. And it's like times that he would follow me around and times that he would sit like on my side away from his mom and just certain things that he did. It just seemed like he was just more or less trying to tell me that he just don't want no parts of his mom.
Yeah, in his way.
Right.
Well, I am so sorry for everything that's happened to all of you, especially Dante. His little face is never far from my mind. He's just, those eyes just pour into you,
Yeah. I'm blessed to be a part of his life. I don't regret nothing. I wouldn't take nothing back.
That says a lot right there.
A lot's came out. If stuff came out, like if I wouldn't have fought this, we don't really actually have the truth, but it's almost there.
Yeah, it's definitely closer than it was.
Right. So again, we just need Leah to just admit what actually happened.
Well, I hope against all odds that she will at some point come forth with what really happened. But in the meantime, how can we help you guys? What can people do now to help you get justice for Dante or anything else?
People that was involved with Dante or had an opportunity to save him from the cops, to the doctor that said that he got the herpes from water droplets. To me, it's like even the person that gave that to him can just go to the cops and be like, "Oh, I gave it to him, but we was in the shower and it water droplets." So it's like, even though it's like that's not true.
That would be great if people could just be brave enough to say something if they know anything. This little guy deserves true justice.
I've came across a few people in jail that, I'm not going to put their names out there, but they was around when he was staying at the house that he was staying at with Leah. And I know a lot of these guys that I was talking to, I know that what they were saying was true because there's only one way you can explain how Dante was. So if somebody came to me and be like, "Yeah, man, he was a happy kid," and I'm going to say, you're lying, So for somebody to come up to me and be like, "Oh yeah, he used to just sit there and he wouldn't, move," or if somebody was eating something, he would just stare at them. And, if they asked him if he was hungry, he would like look back at Leah and like shake his head, yeah, just to make sure that she wasn't watching. So it's like, it's like, all right, I believe that because that's how he was with me, so, they didn't want to come to court. As far as like, again, like what happened to him, Leah only can explain that. I mean, like I don't believe that it was the person that she was saying. I mean, she accused numerous people of raping her, and she accused numerous people of being the reason why she lost the relationship or something. And I mean, she's just known to point the finger at other people when she justifies all these bruises that this kid has. It's just always he's banging his head, he's bouncing his face off the floor, he's flipping out. And I always ask her, like, well, where's he doing it at? And she's like, at the shelter. He only does it when it's her and him. All right, she's never said that, all right, well, he got this bruise from being at this guy's house, or he got this bruise from being around me. It's just always he got this bruise from banging his head off the wall.
I'm glad that a lot of people have overcome that immediate bias and see the truth of what really happened.
Yeah, that right there alone was like, it was just a blessing because it's like, again, when this first happened and I'm like, all right, well, this is what the cops are saying. This is what the medical examiner's saying. And this is what I'm saying. Who am I to, for people to really sit there and fight for me when I'm being accused of killing a little child? I just assumed that people were going to hate me and they were just going to believe what they were saying. And I believe it took up until the time that Leah did enough news interviews to where people was like, hold on, something's not right. I just believe that they showed their true colors and the jurors seen that. At one time, like I pointed out that this lady that was there, I guess she was the one that prepped the DA's witnesses. I saw her while Leah was on the stand trying to give her answers.
What happened to, do you swear to tell the truth? Not do you swear to tell them what we want you to tell them?
Right. And I mean, I seen this and I pointed it out. And then from after that, I don't know what happened, but I want to push that issue as well. Like I think Holt said that they banned her from the courtroom, but no, I went more than that. Like that's not cool.
No, it's coaching. That's ridiculous.
Right. when the question was asked where the bruise was that she saw on Dante's face, Leah like looks over like past the DA, and I look, and the lady was about to put her hand where the bruise was. When I looked, she like hurried up and moved her hand. That whole thing was just corrupt. It was rehearsed. They were looking out for each other, and I just really didn't think that the juror were going to see through it. I underestimated it.
Yeah, well, I'm glad they got it right this time, and now it's time for a lot of other people to make things right too.
Yes, definitely. As far as my justice for Dante goes, I just, want everybody involved, from the cops to just children and youth to, even the lady at the shelter. Like, she sat on the stand and like she changed her story from what she said in her first initial interview. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's like, all right, everything is documented. So, you can't take back what you said.
Yeah, you'll perjure yourself.
Right. But I felt like they did that. Every time they said something, Holt's like, he's like, well, do you remember saying in this interview? So then he would have to refresh their memory. And it's just like,
oh, I'm glad you had a lawyer who was on top of things. That's fantastic.
Holt and his staff was definitely on top of it. They saved my life.
They're on the Christmas card list this year.
Yeah. But they really cared. It wasn't just a case to Holt. It wasn't for publicity or anything like that. Holt, he's always been a great lawyer. So it's like, he's not doing this for money. Like he really actually cared. His secretaries, paralegal, like they all actually really cared.
And they want justice for Dante too.
And they're still fighting for Dante, and I'm blessed to have had Holt.
Yeah, definitely.
He believed from the beginning. I believe they knew they were gonna lose from the beginning. But again, they don't want to admit that they're wrong. They want to build a story.
Yeah, they want to justify their theories and whatnot at the cost of the taxpayer.
Sure, yeah, because I guarantee that trial was probably a lot of. I guarantee that was a lot of money.
Well, I hope things definitely change, and I'm sure that the work you're doing will go a long way towards that, because you're not letting it drop. You're calling attention to it, and no wonder they're not huge fans. But you know what? That's too bad. If you don't want your image put out there with negative connotations, then don't do these types of things.
Yeah, but here's the thing: it's okay when they do it. They're allowed to use my DUI picture. That picture had nothing to do with my case.
Oh, is that what that was?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So when you see that picture and you see what they're saying, of course you got people like, oh yeah, he did that.
Right. Well, I think, Sarah, your mom, everybody who's posting about this, they have done a fantastic job of keeping people informed with the actual facts, and that goes a long way. And that's why, of course, they tried to silence you, Sarah, and your mom.
And me. Yeah, and that's the point I was getting at, as far as like they're allowed to incriminate me. They're allowed to already try to get into the future jurors' heads that I did this by putting that picture up, saying what they were saying. But when I'm defending myself, sending my discovery to Sarah, and she posts it on social media so people can see it. All I'm doing is, again, I'm defending myself. Y'all, it was okay to do that. I couldn't put a gag order on them for that.
Yeah, it doesn't work both ways.
No, so now I'm getting positive feedback, and they don't like that, because I have, people all over fighting for me. They don't like that. Like, that's foreign to them. Like they've never went through something like this.
Public opinion can really turn the tides on things like this.
Right. And it's a lot of good people. Like I've met and I've friended a lot of good people. A lot of people has been, supporting and helping me out a lot. I'm just trying to just adjust still, to being out from being incarcerated for that long. Like, my biggest thing is like downtime, like I try to just be around people and just talk to people all day until I go to sleep. It's still a lot on my mind, like I can actually mourn now, which I couldn't mourn the way that I wanted to in prison, because you can't walk around jail crying all day long. You just got to just hide your emotions and just keep that face. You don't want to look vulnerable.
No, of course. I'm so happy to hear you have a ton of support throughout this whole process. It kind of restores my faith in humanity a little bit.
Yes, it did. It did. Because you got, like, again, you got people all over, like, coming together, and fighting for what's right. That's definitely a blessing. I always felt like, that's Dante at work.
Yeah.
Like, he had my back, through this whole time. I always looked at it like that. I was like, yeah, granted I might be in jail, but compared to Leah, I was living pretty good as far as like people believing in me and fighting for me. I mean, she just had it bad since.
That's public perception again. But if you incriminate yourself as she has, it's really not a good look.
No, it's not.
Well, if there's anything that I can do to help, whatever you guys need, just reach out. I have no problem with doing that. I'm more than happy to help and support however I can.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm not really too vocal on Facebook, but, I will definitely reach out to you and message. We got to keep this going and we can't stop.
Definitely. Agreed.
We got to keep fighting. Like, it's only right.
Dante deserves it, and we can't let him be forgotten in everything.
Definitely.
Every ounce of my respect and well wishes go out to Tyree, to Sarah, and to everyone seeking true justice for Dante. Huge respect in particular goes to defense attorney Farley Holt, who stood by Tyree from the beginning, fought like hell for his innocence, and was extremely on the ball with his case. Mr. Holt is an excellent example of a defense attorney doing the right thing. If you'd like to help Tyree transition back into normal life after 4 years of unjust imprisonment, you can send contributions through Cash App to Tyree's mom, Cheryl Preston, at cash.app/$Cheryl, CHERYL, Preston, PRESTON 0205. I'll include that link, as well as links to the Justice for Tyree and Justice for Dante Facebook pages, in the show notes for this episode. I'll make sure to keep you updated on the case through my socials as well. No one is giving up on the hope or the fight for true justice for Dante. My sources for this episode were the York Dispatch, Penn Live Patriot News, the Justice for Dante and Justice for Tyree pages on Facebook, and of course Leah Mullinix and Tyree Bowie. That's it for this week. Join me next week for another episode. If you like the show, please follow or subscribe to Suffer the Little Children on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, Spreaker, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast listening app. And please leave me a 5-star rating and a positive review on your favorite podcast platform. Visit the website at sufferthelittlechildrenpod.com. You can support the show by visiting patreon.com/stlcpod, where you can become a patron for rewards ranging from a shout-out by name on the show to bonus content and exclusive gifts. You can also support the show at ko-fi.com/stlcpod. Follow the podcast on Facebook and Instagram at Suffer the Little Children Pod and on TikTok at STLCpod. View photos related to today's episode on Facebook. For more stories like the one you heard today, visit sufferthelittlechildrenblog.com. This podcast is researched, written, hosted, edited, and produced by Laine. Intro theme music is by Dream Note Music, and all music for the show is licensed from audiojungle.net. For more information about preventing or reporting child abuse, visit childhelp.org or call your area's child abuse hotline. And remember, if you see something, say something.